My goodness. On behalf of a grateful nation, thanks to all three of you for that remarkable conversation. David for facilitating it, and Ken and Lonnie for just giving us such a great deep dive into the currents of the work that we're doing. Again, I'm Eric Liu. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Citizen University. And I have the wonderful opportunity not only to follow that panel conversation, but to try, inspired by it, to make sense of the last couple of days that we've spent together here as we close out our time together at the Civics Now Summit. And as I was listening to this conversation we just heard, I was taking notes furiously, but it occurred to me that there were three questions that arose over and over again in that conversation that apply so profoundly to the work of this vast nationwide coalition of people who've come together for this summit and who have committed to be part of the boosting and revival of civic learning and civic education all across the United States. And the three questions are these: who is us? Who decides? And who's responsible now? And I just want to say a few words about each of these questions as a way of summing up our time together. This first question of who is us? I hope you all were taking notes as rapidly as I was, as both Ken and Lonnie were reflecting profoundly on the ways in which, when we think about the us, the US and the us, as Ken was saying, we do so in a maximally inclusive way. When we think about not only the study of history, but the study of civics more broadly, the study of what it means to be American right now, that us, both in terms of who we study, but who in fact actually helps bring stories into the fold, has to be maximally expansive, to include voices not always heard, to include diversity of every kind: racial and ethnic diversity, gender diversity, diversity of viewpoint, and political ideology. That inclusion of perspectives, we know over and over again, our political and education establishment will tend one way or another. And our work is to continually ask, who is the us here that's in the room? Who's the us that's at the table? Who's the us that's asking these questions about what can and cannot be taught, what should and should not be considered? Lonnie said in the course of that conversation, a nation is defined by what it forgets as much as by what it remembers. Well, we forget when that us becomes narrowed and constrained. Again, whether by race or other dimensions of identity or by ideology. And so we have to be maximally inclusive of how the right and the left see things. It is a binocular vision. And if you're looking out of only one eye at our country's past and present, you lose all depth perception, literally and figuratively. Who is us? The second question that flows straight from that, though, is who decides? And this is where I was so moved by what Ken was talking about, that civics is not only the learning that there are 100 senators and 435 members of the House of Representatives. It's not even only learning about the process and mechanics of how a bill becomes a law, but it's learning in a more textured way at the level of your town, your neighborhood, your community, your part of the country. Who decides? That is the central question of all civic power. Who decides? Who decides what topics should be on the agenda? Who decides why bus service should be expanded here but cut there? Who decides who's going to get vaccines and not? Who decides what the rules are going to be in the course of the pandemic to balance public health and personal freedom? Every aspect of civic life turns on these questions of who decides. And our literacy in civics has to be a literacy in that question that goes beyond simply the mechanics and the machinery of the institutions of government and elections, to thinking about how we frame up debates and arguments, how we think about social norms, how in the course of any one of the stories and any one of the documentaries that Ken and his colleagues have made over the course of his career. Take a topic that doesn't seem civic at all, the history of baseball. Who decides on integration of the national pastime? Well, yes, a commissioner and an owner and of a baseball team and a player like Jackie Robinson. But what also happened there was social norms shifted, and we, the people, began to make it more possible, to put it into the frame of the possible, that a decision like this could be taken. And so this question of what it means to reflect on the power of decision means that we've got to be literate in all the ways, formal and informal, that we shape the frame of the possible in civic life. We also have to remember when we focus on this question of who decides that, as we've heard throughout these last 2 days, the teaching of civics is about the teaching not only of core knowledge, which is foundational. We do need to know facts. We do need to know references. We do need to know what's meant by Appomattox. We do need to know what's meant by the party of Lincoln. We do need to know what it means when someone says, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. If you don't have these references in your repertoire, then you walk through the world only half civically literate. But on top of that foundation of facts, we have to have a capacity to know what the core American arguments are. Because America is an argument, continually, perpetually. And God help us if any one of these arguments should ever end in final victory between liberty and equality, between strong national government and local control. It is that tension and it is that argument between color consciousness and color blindness. Who decides? We decide where we sit in those tensions. We decide which way we're going to lean on one of these or another. And that brings me to the third and the final question that has emerged throughout these last couple of days and that I urge us all to think about. And that is, who's responsible now? Who's responsible now? And what I mean is responsible for everything. Of course, we as a solutions-oriented group gathered together here today. We're thinking about how we fix what's broken in the body politic, how we heal the sicknesses that plague us of polarization and tribalism and profound ignorance and conspiracy thinking. But what goes along with that is what precedes the solution. Who's responsible for how we got here? And the answer in both cases is all of us. We're all responsible, either by our actions or by our omissions. And we've gathered together here, in a sense, as civic professionals. Many of us are educators, many of us are administrators, there are legislators and policymakers and lawmakers here. There are public historians of the sort that Ken and Lonnie are. There are people who live as big citizens and think of themselves committed in their lives, as David was, to thinking about how we spread this ethos. But whatever your station is, however you come to this work, and particularly if you work in the classroom, either as a teacher or as a learner, particularly in this way, that taking of responsibility right now, in the smallest ways, how do we each hold up our corner? How do we actually lift up the possibility of a bigger story of us and a more capacious sense of who gets to decide things? You may not be, as some of our earlier panelists were today, state superintendents of public instruction or members of state boards of education. You may be a classroom teacher in a small town right now. And I submit to you that you are as responsible for the course of the healing of the body politic as anybody that we've heard from here today. And so that sense of responsibility and empowerment is one that I really want to emphasize here. We've heard throughout the last couple of days ways in which we can each take concrete steps, ways in which by inviting people into new conversations, by facing the tendency in our own hearts toward polarization, toward dividing people into binary categories. That tendency that is all around us in politics emerges from inside us. You may say, well, I'm not one of those people who's on the extremes. It doesn't matter. The human heart, the American heart is an extreme version of the human heart. The human heart will tend toward those kinds of binaries. And we have to ask ourselves how in every setting we move in, as educators, as learners, as citizens, how we can change our hearts. This, as Stephen Heinz said at the beginning of our time together today, is a matter not of structural change or policy reform. This is a matter first of culture, of belief, of what John Dewey called democratic faith, what Tocqueville spoke of as civic religion. This is about the idea that democracy works only if enough of us believe democracy works. This is about creating a culture of commitment to each other and to our constitutional democracy, to our republic. And that commitment, when it emerges first from the inside out, not from the top down, when it emerges from the heart and the gut, then it will ramify out across all of our institutions and especially our educational institutions. And we are going to change the culture that changes the frame of the possible, that in, I believe, a few short years is going to help revive in our country a commitment to civic education, to civic learning across every form of institution. So I want to leave you today with a call to action. And I want to encourage you, after we show a short video here that will give the concrete steps in which you can now commit and join this culture of commitment to civic learning. After you watch this video, I encourage you to join the post-event working session with others from your state, where you'll get to debrief on these last couple of days of learning and conversation and provocation, talk about how your state measures up against the recommendations of the Civics Now state policy menu, and prioritize policy reforms for 2022 and beyond, but also sit with this question of how, in every part of your life, you can take more responsibility for the change we want to see. You can click on the link in the chat to join your state session. As we enter into that part of our day, I just want to say again, on behalf of Citizen University, on behalf of the entire Civics Now Coalition, on behalf of certainly Louise Dubé, who's brought us together here today, thank you so much for being part of this work, part of this culture, and part of the change. Let's go forth and change our country for the better.